Welcome to a special feature on SOBO.live, an interview that I've wanted to do for years now, literally years. We're finally going to have a chance to talk with Bossier City Council, Chris Smith, a friend of South Bossier, a friend of Bossier City, with all the questions I've compiled over the last few years. Chris, thank you so much for finally giving me an opportunity to do a deep dive into Chris, what it's like in your current role, some of your background. Again, I've been asking to do this for years now.
Yeah.
So thanks for finally taking me up on it. Can you give yourself just a quick introduction? Most everyone knows you, but for those who may be wondering, why is Wes sitting out talking to Chris? Give me a little bit of background.
Yeah, so Chris Smith, born and raised in Northwest Louisiana, so actually born at the old Bossier Medical Center, raised in Shreveport, proud graduate of Captain Shreve High School. I can say I now share a high school with the Speaker of the House of the United States Congress, so that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
But anyways, after high school, I left briefly, spent a decade in a little rural town in South Louisiana called Thibodaux, Louisiana. That is a time of my life that really shaped who I am today, and a lot of what makes Chris Smith today. Spent a little bit of time in Mobile, Alabama before making my way back to Bossier City in 2016, where I had the opportunity to meet my wife. Fun fact, so I met Courtney in 2016. She would not let me take her on a date until 2018. So I had to pursue her for a while. And our first date was actually a family function, a surprise party for her cousin. And let me tell you, fellas, if you go on a first date to a family function, you better be for real, because you meet the family, you meet the parents and all of that. And, man, life just comes at you quick. That was in August of 2019. 2018. We got engaged December of 2018, married September of 2019. And to kind of bring all this full circle, it was early 2020 when I made the decision. So a few months after we got married, that I was going to run for city council.
Wow. So from a family perspective, new family, suddenly being hoisted into your first foray into politics.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what that was like. Where did you get the genesis? Why did you run for office, in 2020?
So that's a great question. So a lot of people think that me and Shane Cheatham have been friends for years. What people probably don't know is that our friendship only dates back to about 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And when we met, Shane had arguably the worst job in politics in Bossier Parish. He was the president of the Bossier Parish School Board the year they were going after a property tax increase to fund a teacher pay raise, and then all the other things that happened to him that year. And I remember I was real conflicted, right? Because I was dating a teacher who desperately wanted a pay raise, but I'm a Republican who desperately did not want to see a tax increase.
Right.
And so I was trying to thread that needle. And ultimately, I was very unsatisfied with how the school board handled that whole situation. And I did what a lot of people do even today. I went to social media to air my grievances. And I was like, oh, yeah, I can't believe the Bossier Parish School Board did this. And that prompted a phone call from Shane. And I'll never forget, we're sitting at Tagara San Miguel, me and him, and we had talked and we knew each other. We're both real estate agents, so we knew each other. And he explains their position and where they were. And then he starts laying out his vision for Bossier City. And that's when he tells me, hey, I think I'm going to run for District 1's city council seat and all this. And I was like, man, I love it. And honestly, that day I walked out of there, I'm going to help you win your District 1 city council race. And then, Tommy Chandler tells me he's running for mayor. And I'm like, I'm all in on you. I'm going to help you win the mayor's race. I had no inkling that I was going to run for city council. And me and Courtney were living in Bel Air subdivision. had a really bad tragic event. There was a big drive-by shooting on Allison Street in Shady Grove. And then later that week, there's a guy with some mental illness that were chasing people down at Walker Place Park, stabbing them. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And so I, again, did what a lot of people do, and I emailed my councilman, who was Don Williams at the time. I actually emailed the entire council and said, hey, look, these are some things that I'm seeing, and I have a few ideas. Would you be interested in meeting with me to kind of discuss this?
How did that go?
It didn't go well. But to be fair, I did get one response, and that was from Don Williams, my council member.
Wow.
And so I had an appointment, met with him at City Hall the same day of a South Bossier lunch meeting. So I went and met with Don at 9 a.m. We talked for about an hour and a half, had a great conversation, went to the South Bossier lunch meeting at 11:30, and Shane put me on the spot and said, hey, somebody went and met with the council member. Why don't you tell us what y'all talked about? And I was like, okay. So I told him and I told the group rather, and we ended up having a pretty good dialogue. And I was driving home that afternoon, been showing some houses, and I get a text from Shane. And it says, we need to find a way to get you on the ballot. I had never even thought. I thought I was going to help him and Tommy Chandler.
Right.
No idea. And I was like, and I knew I was getting ready to propose to Courtney, and I knew all of this stuff in my head. And I was like, man, we're probably not going to live in District 3 forever. Cause we want to have family. We got married later in life than most people. And so we knew we wanted to have kids, and, the house we were in is 1,100 square feet. So I knew we probably were going to move. So I told Shane, man, I just don't think it's in the cards for me, because I can't go up against Tim Larkin and David Montgomery. I mean, been there 20 years. They are Bossier City. And, I prayed on it. I did. And I talked to Courtney about it. And we were in our house in Bel Air, had not even found a new place to live yet. And we made the decision that day that I was going to run.
And that's when you became the third amigo.
That's when I became the third amigo. And I was actually the first to really announce. So me and Courtney decided I would run. Not, like I said, not long after we got married in 2019. It was early 2020, probably March. Mm-hmm. I announced in June of 2020. If you go back and watch the video, because June of 2020, COVID year, right? Yeah. Everything was shut down. We couldn't have in-person meetings and things like that. And so I did a campaign announcement standing in our spare bedroom at this house in Bel Air that I had painted to be my daughter's nursery. Nobody knew Courtney was pregnant. We knew, but we hadn't told anybody yet. And so I'm standing in this room that I just finished painting. There's nothing in there. And I do this whole campaign announcement in June of 2020, and I'm off to the races. Shane announced, probably November of that year. Tommy got out there maybe in October, September. And so the three amigos were born. And in the midst of all this, like I said, Courtney was pregnant in November of 2020. Collins was born. Mm-hmm. That election was also in March of 21.
Right.
But what's important to this whole timeline is I started campaigning in June, but I was knocking on doors in November.
Right.
Like, I have a newborn child at home, and I kiss my wife, love you, see you later, and I got to go knock on some doors. And because I knew I had to knock. I didn't have any money, not from Bossier originally. So I was a big unknown. And I'm the type of guy that I'm not going to do anything just like halfway.
Right.
Like, I'm not just going to go out there. There were a lot of people saying, just put your name out there and maybe you'll lose this time, but you'll win the next time because you'll have name recognition. I was like, no, if I'm going to run, I'm running to win. And so I knocked doors every single day from November to March. And ultimately, I think that's what probably put me over the ledge because, I mean, I had a budget of like $10,000. I remember looking at the campaign disclosures and David had spent $50,000. Mm-hmm. And I was like, gosh, how do you compete with that?
Right.
Grassroots, brother, grassroots.
That's a pretty incredible story. And I didn't realize, I guess I remember voting in the election. I remember the talk of the three amigos, and I was I was like, yeah, this could be a turning point in Bossier, and really accelerated my interest in local politics. Because prior to that, I really just looked at the national and marginally the state level. I probably met you somewhere around that time, maybe through Shane, but I was curious, what was the genesis of you running?
I can actually tell you when me and you met.
I couldn't. So
and it was so it's how most people meet in today's day and age via social media. That incident on Allison Street and then the mental health guy. I had posted on social media about how I had this meeting with Bubba Don. None of these other guys responded, but I had this great meeting with Bubba Don, and somebody commented and tagged you in the comment section like, "Oh, hey, Weston Marriott, you could speak to the police department," or something along those lines. And so we engaged in a dialogue, and that's how I met one of my closest friends. He's my current business partner, Hunter Timms. He's the mayor of Halton. I met him during all of this because he's former Bossier City police officer. He was an active police officer at that time, I think.
I think so.
I met Jordan Johnson, who's become a good friend of mine, former Bossier City police officer, Chad Sepulvedo, and you. And that's kind of like how you were brought into.
So it was around that time. Interesting.
Yeah.
I thought that was the case, which ends up being really a pivotal time, not only for Bossier City in general, because it led to such a big transformation, but that was one of the first major acts of violence in a South Bossier neighborhood that I could remember. And I think a lot of people woke up and said, well, we've got to do something differently.
Yeah.
I remember that that was like around Allison over there by where Sun City goes into Shady Grove. Yeah, that was a terrible deal. So I guess getting into your first term, so you were elected, kind of a close election, because it was you, Tim Larkin, and David Montgomery all vying for two seats.
And Lee Jeter.
Oh, and Lee Jeter. I didn't even realize he was on the ballot. I was looking, I guess, at one side of it. So in your first term, you kind of, just like, I guess, during the electoral process, an underdog, maybe counted out early. Tell me about your first term and what you drew out of it. What are you proud of in your first term?
Man, so I don't think you can talk about Chris Smith, Tommy Chandler, and even Brian Hammond's first term without saying the word term limits.
No, yeah, it's true.
Like that was a defining issue of our term, right? So you had the election of 2021. Term limits was the big talking point because you had city councilmen, all of them with the exception of Jeff Free and Tommy Harvey had been there for 20 plus years. Tommy Harvey decided, he announced when he first ran for city council that if term limits aren't enacted in Bossier City, I'm going to term myself out. And he followed through with that promise. And so that's why Vince Maggio has the seat that he has, because Tommy Harvey termed himself. And then Jeff had been there for 12 years at the time. But everybody else, Scott Irwin, 18 years, Bubba Don, 26 years, David and Tim, 20 years, Jeff Darby, 30 years. So, you had entrenched incumbents. Then you had a mayor. Granted, he had only been mayor for 12 years, but then he also was CAO for a couple years, 12 years before that. Then he was a civic center director before that. So you had a mayor who really had 30 years of experience, if you will. And so the big talking point was term limits. And I remember we were at a candidate forum at Silver Star. All the candidates were there at the Republican Women's event. And man, it got heated. If you were there, you remember that night. It was a wild night in Bossier politics. Really? And I remember someone got up and said, Bossier City rejected term limits 20 years ago. There will never be term limits in Bossier City. And I took that as a challenge. I said, no, we can do that. And so fast forward, I win. And one of the first things that I'm ready to do is tackle term limits, because I know it's going to be the toughest issue. And so me and Brian are working on how we're going to do it. And we pretty much get a general consensus from everybody that there's a need for a charter commission.
Right.
And we get pretty unanimous support from our colleagues that, yes, let's move forward with the charter commission. The city attorney drew it up, and then out of nowhere, it's pulled. It's not voted on, and we're not given a good reason on why we can't bring it up. Mm-hmm. Now, I know what the reason is because, they knew that term limits was going to be a defining issue, that whomever Tommy Chandler and Brian Hammonds put on this charter commission, they were going to have a mandate to look at term limits, and they didn't want that. And so it was ultimately killed. And I worked those back channels, I talking to colleagues, trying to figure out a different way. Man, I had a debate one night with the city attorney's office on, well, maybe the charter could be interpreted to say this, or state law could be interpreted. Like, I was trying to find any loophole that I could. And then citizens do what citizens do when they've had enough, right? Like, there were lots of issues, and you could tell like the citizenry was just slowly getting a little bit more and more fed up with every passing vote that happened. Till one day they said, you know what? We're going to take it into our hands and we're going to do it. Like, that's what I love about politics.
Right.
Like, we live in
Not
a country.
just once, but twice.
Right.
Which is incredible.
Like, we live in a country where you can say, I've had enough. I want to change it. Mm-hmm. Like, it's incredible. And that's part of what makes me love this whole politics thing. And so citizens, we all know the story, so we don't have to repeat that, but 2 petitions, it gets across the finish line. Term limits are now the law of the land in Bossier City, and we were able to do that. I remember standing in that ballot box, pushing yes to vote on term limits, saying, I was told at Silver Star that night we'd never do this.
It was never going to happen.
And we did it. And I did it without compromising morals or principles or things that I felt strongly about.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because you were criticized by, there was a little bit of a magnifying glass on term limits. The Charter Commission idea was killed the first time. Mm-hmm. And then we had the petition, and it was held up in the courts. It got kicked back. They did another one. And then it was a race to see who could change the charter first. And the council, I think, without your vote, I think they had a majority, and they created a charter commission. And their goal was to get these, for lack of a better term, watered down term limits in place and beat the petition term limits to the voters.
Right.
And you were criticized a lot, because when the Charter Commission finally completed their work, they had a mandate to send it to the voters, and a lot of people wanted you to try and block that. Tell me why didn't you block it?
Yeah, I was. And coincidentally enough, I'm sitting across the table from someone who also criticized me.
That's very true. I was one of the ones that said, hey, this is a bad idea. But you said, you talk about sticking to your principles. What about that process was so important for you to send it through? So
I have 2 small kids. I have Collins and Connor. Collins is 5 years old, getting ready to start kindergarten this year. Connor's 3. And we're at this point in their lives where we're trying to teach them right and wrong, trying to show them that you do the right thing even when nobody's looking, because it's the right thing to do. You do the right thing even when it's not popular, because it's the right thing to do. And we're really trying to instill in our children that, hey, just because so-and-so tells you to do this, if it's not right, you don't do it. We always do what's right, and we tell the truth and all these things, right? Every parent's been there. You've got kids, you've been there. And so we're in that season of our life with young kids. And so I think back to that day, and yes, there's a lot of pushback. You've got to try to kill this. I was never going to kill it. There was 2 votes, so it was going to be 5-2 if I voted no. And I'm thinking to myself, like, the petitioners had to actually sue the council to get them to act they were suing the council because the council was not doing what the law says they shall do, right? That word shall is very important. And the law also says, hey, we may not have liked the charter commission. We may think that there's something nefarious going on here and they're trying to undermine the voters. And they probably were. That isn't the debate. Like, we knew what they were doing. What was the point of contention was saying, Chris, you have to do this. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I've joined with the petitioners. I'm also suing the city council with you guys. Mm-hmm. And the law says I shall do something. And so I almost felt like I was thinking about my kids. Like, I've got to do what's right, even when nobody likes it, even when everybody's not looking or are looking or whatever. I have to do what's right because what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong, right? And so it was a tough vote because I didn't want to be the reason it all got derailed. But ultimately, I had to do what I felt was right.
Right. Luckily, it all worked out, and history will remember that Chris ended up on the right side of term limits. This whole path would be completely different had it failed. We got the wrong version, but I think thankfully the support was so high, voters turned out, and we got the version that was, I think, the petition version, which we'll see how it works out. Democracy is a huge experiment. Mm-hmm. We may end up 50 years from now and find out term limits weren't the best thing since sliced bread. I think they are. I think they're great, especially at this level, a medium-sized municipality. But I think it was an interesting choice that you had the principled stance and you stuck to it, even though it was very unpopular.
It was.
Many people, including myself, were calling and saying, hey, this is not good. We got to shut it down. I think a lot of people wanted to know what was the reasoning behind that, because it would have been an easy political win for you to be a symbolic no vote on it. Mm-hmm. If term limits were your proudest accomplishment in your first term, is there anything that didn't work out the way you wanted? Do you have any regrets in your first term?
Sure. Many, because your first term, it's cliche, but it's true. Your first term, they tell you, it takes you a year to find the bathroom in City Hall. It takes you, there's so much about how government works. And you just think when you're campaigning, like, oh, it's just going to be easy. You're just going to get in there and you're going to do this, this, and this. And it's a gut check. When you realize that it's not as easy as you think it is. And so, there are many regrets. I can think of a few, but one in particular. I love Bossier City. I'm very passionate about Bossier City. Mm-hmm. I chose I couldn't choose where my parents decided to raise me. They chose Shreveport. Right. But when I came back to Northwest Louisiana, I chose Bossier because I wanted to live in a community where I felt safe, where I felt I could thrive. And Bossier embraced me. Bossier is where I opened up a couple businesses, where I met my wife. Like, I'm entrenched here. I'm here until the very end, and I love Bossier. And because of that passion for Bossier City, I sometimes get ahead of myself. I let that passion come out when I'm talking to people. Sometimes I speak so quick. What frustrates me is that government moves way too slow. Like, you can't get anything done. And now you have term limits. Now I have a finite amount of time that I can sit in this seat.
Got an expiration date.
Yeah. And so I know I've got to get things done. And Bossier is so full of potential. Like, we're right there on the cusp of doing something great, because we already are a great city, but we are destined for even better things. And so I get frustrated sometimes when things are moving slow. And then that passion comes out sometimes in debate. And I can think back, look, there was a moment we were having a passionate debate in the city council chambers. Emotions were high. Chris Smith was passionate, and I spoke too fast. And ultimately, when you speak too fast, you make mistakes. And if you look back over the last 5 years, there have been several incidents of it, because I let my passion get to me sometimes, and I speak too fast. And I remember one incident in particular where I spoke fast and I hurt someone's feelings. And it's like I teach my kids, people will forget what you say, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so to know that I hurt somebody's feelings because I could have stopped for half a second, frame my thoughts, don't let the first thing I'm thinking come out of my mouth, and achieved what I was wanting to achieve, but not hurt someone's feelings. Instead, I let that passion, and I came out a little bit harsher than and I think that person knows I didn't mean anything negative towards them as a person. It was just my passion that came out. And ultimately, that is one thing that I'm learning as a person, because I feel like we're all evolving as people. And one thing I'm having to learn is nobody else really moves at Christmas pace. I'm quick, man. I want things to happen fast. And even in the debate, sometimes I'll speak too fast instead of just stop, collect my thoughts, and then proceed.
It's interesting you say that, because I first put myself out there at a council meeting during the term limits. And I said this, I think, 100 times, but had I gone there, spoke on term limits, message received, no pushback, I probably would have never showed up again. Yeah. But because I did get some negative feedback from a couple of the members, kind of like it fuels the fire a little bit. But looking back now, 3 or 4 years in retrospect, I too wish I would have not been as quick to respond. And really, I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
There's some things you wish you'd kind of take back. Even though politically I disagree fundamentally with several members of the old council, I still think I treated them harshly. Even though I felt their behavior was unethical, illegal, I still feel like I could have been kinder. I could have relayed my message more strongly. I don't want to be typecast as the person who just goes up there to stir the pot.
Yeah.
I want because part of your message gets diluted that way. And I think you found similar. The message you had to send gets diluted when someone feels you're being harsh.
Right. And I mean, what's the saying that they say that, you get further with honey than vinegar, or something
Sometimes
along.
the vinegar feels good.
Yeah.
And that's, I find myself, wishing I hadn't used as much vinegar. I don't think honey would have worked, but I could have slowed down. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. I do want to talk about something during your first term. And this is a question I've been wanting to cover for a long time. I think one of the reasons we haven't had this conversation before, because it was such a pressing issue, but I think now enough time has passed, and I'm curious. So in your first term, one of the big things after the post-term limits era is the parking lots. And for those who may not, in a nutshell, the parking lot situation was 2 businesses in Bossier City got their parking lot completely destroyed, removed, and repaved, courtesy of the city of Bossier. What happened with that? As much as you can tell me, as transparent as you can be, what happened with the parking lots?
So you weren't lying when you said it had to be no holds barred, right?
I was going to ask you regardless. So I appreciate you being support about it.
No. So look, bad situation, right? And I think that all parties involved wish that it was handled differently. Hindsight being 2020. Look. Everybody knows that happened, and it was really just kind of swept under the rug. New council comes in, and we kind of get a little bullish, and we want to look at it. And if I'm self-reflecting about just this first year of this new council, I'd say maybe we bit off a little bit more than we could chew with such an issue. Because when you start talking about the gratuitous donation and the Constitution and all these things, I mean, you're really getting into some pretty complicated legal framework, and so it was a big thing to kind of take that on as a project, and ultimately we're still working through that process. It hasn't finished yet. I know there's a lot of questions of where is it at? It's still working its way through the process. So we had a committee that did an investigation. That investigation was then forwarded to an outside council that the city council picked that had no ties to the city.
Now, when you say that, because we've heard that before, famously, when the previous council went to get a term limits attorney, they said, "Oh, it's someone outside of the city and not associated." Well, that turned out not to be factually accurate. They had represented the city or the NPC, and they knew each other.
Right.
In this case, how did you avoid that? Because when you say we went to outside counsel, no relation to the city, is that true? Tell me what you mean.
Yeah, it's true. So we interviewed a few firms just to figure out who we felt would be a good fit, and we ended up with Fior and Dunlap. And they did a conflict check, and I gave them everybody's name that was involved, and they made sure that there was no connection. Now, to be completely transparent, they did a decade ago advise the Bossier Parish Police Jury on a bond matter, but it was very, very minute, and nobody.
Is that just because there's so few attorneys that maybe do municipal?
Yeah, municipal law is very niche law, and so to find somebody that's never worked in Bossier Parish was challenging, and so and that was what we were running into. Is every firm that we would reach out to, no, we know so and so, or we've done extensive work here. So this was one of the few that we found that the firm itself only had one prior engagement in all of Bossier Parish, and it was
never with the city.
Okay. It was over a decade ago. It was on a bond issue, and the attorney who actually helped us, she had never done anything.
Gotcha.
So investigation, sent to outside counsel, now sitting on the desk of the legislative auditor. And
how did it get there? How did it get to the legislative auditor?
The council sent it down there. So we sent it. We asked the legislative auditor, "Hey, here's all of our information. Just look at it, advise us, tell us where we need to go, and also let us know what should be redacted, should not be redacted, what's a public record," because there are some sensitive things in there, because there is ongoing litigation still.
With Nichols Lube Center and around that area.
Yeah. So there are some things until that is settled that can't be disclosed yet, but ultimately it eventually all will. And so it's sitting on the desk of the legislative auditor. I have the clerk call once a month. "Hey, where are y'all at on this?" And they tell us the same thing. It's in queue, and we may look at it. And to be completely transparent, they've told us they may not even look at it. They say they get hundreds of referrals a year. They sort through them to find what they're interested in, what they think is an actual legitimate complaint, and then they look at those, and it could take a couple months. It could take a year. So we're in this process.
I want to go back to when you retained counsel. What was the scope of review with that counsel? Like, what did you ask her? Hey, is this criminal? Is this civil? Is this procedural? Did you get any feedback as to the severity of the potential misconduct, or was it just, is there misconduct?
Just, is there misconduct, really? And ultimately, look, I think they're going to get away with one, right? Because the way the Constitution, so you have what's called the Cabela's test. It's a Louisiana Supreme Court decision where I believe it's the city of Gonzales was facing some litigation, and they said, look, to give a gratuitous donation, there's a three-legged stool, and it has to meet all these three. And if it meets all three, then it's perfectly fine. It's legal. Well, one of those is there a public good? Well, that's very broad, and it's in the eye of the beholder, right? So what is the public good? Well, someone could say in this case, for instance, maybe the public good is the city not spending $300,000 litigating it. Or the public good is, the public has quicker access to a public facility. It's so broad, right? And one attorney could say this, another attorney could say this. Ultimately, we felt like it was important to just go to the legislative auditor. You set the framework in which we operate financially. So you tell us what you think.
So You say ultimately the proverbial they may have gotten away with one. We know the council had the committee to investigate, which has concluded with sending it off to the legislative auditor. Was there any action that the council took to prevent this from happening in the future? I know there was an ordinance on certain payments, and I think did you guys discuss an audit? Was that genesis of the audit, the new audit type from this particular incident?
So yes, so we passed an ordinance that says if risk management is going to cut a check that costs more than $25,000, you have to come to the council for approval. That is what the Bossier Parish School Board currently has in place, and that's what many municipalities across the state has in place. So we felt like that was a good number. And look, I mean, the city gets, I don't want to say sued, but we get threatened with litigation every single day, whether it's a city vehicle's driving down the road and a rock flings up and hits somebody in the windshield. Well, they're calling the city threatening to sue us, or somebody trips, or somebody, anything happens. We get threatened with it all day long. So the council didn't want to be bogged down with like the little day-to-day stuff. Like, let the people do their job within some parameters. So we felt like if this is the number that most municipalities find works, even governing bodies within our parish have adopted this, that's a good number to start with. And it's worked out well. I mean, I'll be honest with you. As the ordinance says that city council president has to sign off on it. Here we are almost a year from that ordinance passing. I haven't signed off on anything yet.
So maybe it worked.
Yes.
Is what you're saying. And I guess the next question that goes along with that, could the parking lot gate happen in 2026?
It couldn't. And look, and so you mentioned a second ago the audit. The audit is, so we coined it the tax reduction audit. We wanted to give it a cool name. I feel like that's whenever you do something cool in politics, you name it, right? And so we had the tax reduction audit. But the thought process behind the tax reduction audit is there a way we can eventually get to where we can start reducing the financial load that is on our citizens? Mm-hmm. That's our eventual goal. And so with this audit, and we're probably going to go and amend it because the current audit team that is doing our current audit has given us some feedback on how they think we can make this better. And so we may go in and amend that legislation eventually, but the city has to do what's called a comprehensive financial review every single year, right? It's a bird's eye view. It doesn't go into depth about the city's actual financial health and where there may be opportunities to save or where there's some risks that we need to look at. So this audit is really designed to give us a tool to use. And good news is I think that audit's going to be wrapped up here in the next couple of weeks. Again, wow. I see that conversation
so it's been
happening
in the works for a while.
Yeah. It started late 2025. And they've been working through it. Of course, you hit income tax season, so accounting firms are bogged down with income taxes and things like that. But it's almost done. Then you have this ordinance where you can't spend more than $25,000 without the council president approving it. And on top of that, in the 2026 budget, we moved risk management and actually gave it a budget. So now if you look at our budget, risk management is in every department's line item. We're budgeting for that. So there's not just like an endless pool of the general fund that they can pull from.
That's my question. If you say you gave risk management a budget. Mm-hmm. So the inference is previously risk management didn't have a budget.
I don't want to say they didn't because they did, but it was what's the best way to put this? It was too easy for them to go into the general fund and just grab what they needed. And so now they're a line item in the budget. We have a whole section on risk management. And that's even more important because this is boring, I know, but the city moved to a new work comp plan that's really going to be beneficial for us in the future as we working through retirees and especially firefighters with Heart and Lung Act and things like that. And so it was really important as we move into this new direction that have its own standalone budget. And so the way this council has approached that issue, I don't think that will ever happen again.
I guess that's the biggest question is one, I think the general consensus is, nothing has happened. And that question's, well, why didn't anything happen? What's going on behind the scenes that the general public is not aware of?
Sure.
It seems like, if I'm summarizing what you said, you did what you could. This all came about at the beginning of a new term, new council. So there's something to be said. You got, was it four rookie counselors, took on something, maybe bit off more than they can chew. But it seems like something good came out of it. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people that would want to see, someone get hauled off the jail for the parking lots. Realistically, though, it's not going to happen.
No, it's not. But look, you cannot like something just because you don't like it doesn't always make it illegal.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for people to understand is, look, we're neighbors. We're colleagues. We all love Bossier City. And sometimes people make decisions that in their head they think is in the best interest of Bossier. And I'm not just talking about this issue. Let's talk about every other issue. Like, you think that you're making what's the best interest. And look, yes, there are some corrupt politicians out there. There are people who go to jail because they do something nefarious and wrong. But I think that's such a small portion of the elected people in this country. I think there's more people who actually love what they do, love the community that they live in, and want to see it get better. And so people make mistakes. You learn from your mistakes. The council learned that, we had an area where we needed to tighten some things up. Because of that, I don't think that this is ever going to be something we're going to have to worry about again. And nobody's going to have themselves put in that situation to make that decision.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have to, maybe I'm a little jaded, but we live in the Bossier bubble. Mm-hmm. And it's almost a fantasy to think that anyone's ever going to be held accountable to the standard that we think as law-abiding citizens that we would be held to if we did something that was borderline illegal.
Sure.
Average Joe, if you're doing 65 and a 55 on 190 and the state troopers are out there, you're going to get a ticket. Mm-hmm. And we feel like that same standard should be applied. Maybe I should say I feel like that same standard should be applied to our public officials when that's really not the case in the Bossier bubble. Maybe we can get there in 10 or 20 years. But the good thing is, if anything good has come out of it, I think we have a plan to prevent it in the future.
Yeah.
We just won't know until someone tests it again. Sure. I feel like we have a pretty good administration in the council now, but that was one of the main things that I had a lot of questions about was the parking lot. How was it investigated? It seems like absent your own detective force. It's hard to do. I think you guys took on a challenge that a seasoned politician, a seasoned police department, that's a difficult thing to investigate potential corruption. But good on you for trying. That's the best I can say. I will say, though, I have another question along the same lines that I know I have strong personal feelings about. A lot of people, the public, have strong personal feelings about. So we have the data centers coming to North Louisiana. Meta is building a huge data center in Richland Parish. It's polarizing and also unifying, and that I've never seen Democrats and Republicans agree on so much about how much they hate data centers, and then also disagree on where they should go. So I say all that to say, data centers in Caddo and Bossier proposed. And this process obviously started a long time ago. And when these companies came in, they asked certain politicians about, the feasibility of coming into town.
Mm-hmm.
They met with economic development groups who are all trying to attract them. And so my question is, what is your philosophy on NDAs? Because the non-disclosure agreements limit what you can share with others in these business negotiations with these mega corporations. Corporations have more attorneys than we have citizens in Bossier. So tell me, what is your personal professional feelings on non-disclosure agreements?
So speaking of things that are unpopular.
Yeah. I know it's unpopular, but a lot of people want to know. What is Chris Smith? What is the Bossier City Council? How do you feel about NDAs?
Sure. Let me ask you this. Are you asking me, did I sign an NDA?
I do want to know. Did you sign an NDA?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Can you talk about it?
I can, sure.
Okay. So that's going to make the rest of this conversation a lot better.
Yes.
How do you feel about it? Tell me about why you signed it.
So how I feel about it. One, I don't like them. I think they're bad. I think that if anybody truly pursues it and it gets up, I think the United States Supreme Court would have a lot to say about the practice of NDAs within government. However, I'm not naive to the reality of where we live and and how economic development works. You cannot like NDAs. I don't like NDAs, but refusing to sign it does more harm for Bossier City and Bossier Parish and the Amazon instance. It would have done us more harm than good. So look at Meta. Meta is building this gigantic facility in Richland Parish. They're building their own water system because, Delhi and those small communities don't have the capacity to sell them water. Amazon came in and they could have built their own water treatment facility. There's nothing stopping them from doing so. They have the money. Bossier City also had the means. And so I can tell you this. So when I signed the NDA, the decision was made. Amazon was coming here. The Bossier Parish Police Jury and the school board and all the other governing entities, they had already it was already done. It was already work in progress. Well, then they had this water part. And they said, hey, look, Bossier City, we want to buy your water. Before we'll talk to you about it, you've got to sign this piece of paper. You're talking about injecting millions of dollars a year into the Bossier City Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. That is a monumental, life-changing amount of money that will propel Bossier City forward. By not signing that, without being able to understand what they wanted to do. I mean, what if all 7 of us chose not to sign it? I'm sure that's what most people would have preferred we do.
Right.
Bossier City misses out on that money. Amazon goes and builds their own water treatment facility.
They have Amazon.
They have the money, and they've done it.
They can drill.
Yeah, they've done it. They've done it elsewhere. They have built water treatment facilities at other campuses, and they're fine with that.
What is it that they didn't want you to disclose?
So they just did. So here's the thing.
Was it just that it was coming, the location? Sure.
So data centers are, they're like this new thing where they're, you have Amazon, you have Meta, you have, Chat GPT, OpenAI, all these different companies that are building these data centers. And it's a race to who can have the most data centers, who can control the data, who can have the largest footprint, because data in today's day and age, data is money.
Right.
Data is how everything operates. And so there's this mass rush. It's like the space race of the 1960s, right? We were trying to beat Russia to the moon. Amazon's trying to beat Meta to having more data centers, or beat OpenAI or whomever the company is, right? And so yeah. And what you find in this business, and not just data centers and economic development in general, when it's a competitive field, if X company finds out that Y company is moving here, well, X company will start putting out a little disinformation into that community to say, oh, Y company's so bad and this is what they're going to do and yada, yada. And so that gets people to turn on Y, right? And then X comes in. It's like, well, we don't do any of that. So why embrace us? Mm-hmm. And so it's at an extreme with data centers because of what they do and the amount of resources that they burn through. But it happens in economic development, and you have governments who are wanting to grow their economy.
So that's what the competition is with right. other governments.
And so what we're doing as a government, as Bossier City, is we're saying, hey, we want to grow our economy. We want Bossier City to thrive. So we're going out to attract these businesses. Well, these businesses are saying, well, Texas will sign an NDA. Why won't you? Mm-hmm. If you won't, we'll just do business in Texas. And so it's almost like you want to, you don't like the idea of the NDA, but you want to grow your economy. So you have to play inside the rules that we have. And right now the rules say that these mega companies want you to sign an NDA only until they've made the decision. And I know it's not popular. I get it. It looks bad. It's terrible that people are so quick to say that government elected officials are lining their pockets. Wes, if I had just a quarter of the money a tenth of the money that people accuse me of taking, I'd be well off, dude. Like, I can't speak for everybody, but what I can speak is for myself, and I can speak for Bossier City. We just want Bossier City to thrive. Nobody's making a penny off of this. Mm-hmm. Nobody's lining their pockets. We just want Bossier City to thrive, and the rules say you have to play ball like this. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, you're going to be left behind. And as an elected official, you really have to think to yourself, am I doing what's right for Bossier City by welcoming this investment? Or would being right by Bossier City watch every other municipality thrive while we get left behind because we don't want to sign it?
So I understand competing against other municipalities and Marshall, Longview, mm-hmm. all these other East Texas communities. That's your competition. Mm-hmm. Does the topic of tax breaks, tax incentives, things that you'll do, is that covered in the NDA, or is it for this Amazon stack NDA, or is it specifically just we want water, we're not talking about the location, we don't want anything released until it's made public?
So for this particular instance, it was all up for the NDA that I signed. I can't speak to what the Bossier Parish Police Jury or the school board.
They came in earlier.
Right. My NDA it didn't say Amazon on it. I didn't know it was Amazon until you found out it was Amazon. I had no idea who it was, right? I had an idea, right? I figured it was either Google or Amazon because it wasn't Meta. Meta was already doing one. And so I had an idea of where it was going. I really thought it was Google, though. That's who I really thought it was. But my NDA just said, hey, you have an industrial customer that wants to buy X amount of gallons of water per day. Are you interested?
Interesting. I guess others probably earlier in the process, mm-hmm. they were negotiating taxes and, payment in lieu of, tax, things like that. And it makes sense that it is an unfair playing field if you don't participate.
Right.
If you don't participate in the secrecy, then you don't even get a seat at the table.
Right.
And I guess until there's federal legislation or a Supreme Court decision, then that's just the way it's going to be. And with these being the most powerful companies in the world, I don't see it changing anytime soon.
Well, and so we're in an interesting place right now because data centers aren't new. They've been around, but the right. technology is really improving quickly. And so, the Amazon data center, for instance, is only going to consume 13% of the water that a normal data center.
Right.
Only 13%. It's a very small amount compared to what the original data centers used, right. And so this technology is evolving, but the amount of tax dollars that this is going to bring into our community is substantial. Mm-hmm. And so, when you ask anybody who is in economic development or is an elected official in Bossier Parish, where do you see Bossier City and Bossier Parish going? the tech world is really where we've leaned into with the investment at LTRI, CIC, and the greater cyber research park. Like, technology is really where we're going. And you know, people don't realize we have Boeing here. We have StrikeWorks here. We have all these big tech companies that do work on the military sector. Right here, General Dynamics, everybody sees the GDIT building. But we have all these tech companies right here in Bossier City and Bossier Parish, and that's really where we're headed. So data centers really kind of fit into our ecosystem, if you will. But even as far as other big economic development adventures, you know, you are looking to see how you can grow your economy and what's best for Bossier. You know, you talked a second ago about payment in lieu of tax, a pilot, or an ITEP, or tax abatements. You know, that's something else that is a big misconception out there, is that Bossier City's just out here writing checks to bring companies in. You know, in my 4 years, I can think of two. Two?
Who were the two?
So you had Live Casino.
Which took a property that was otherwise rotting, sinking into the Red River. I think they actually hauled the old riverboat off, and now is generating, you know, significant tax revenue. Yeah, so I think that would make sense.
So we abated a very small portion of their property tax, which the city of Bossier, go to my Facebook page, I broke down property tax anyway. City of Bossier doesn't make money off property. We're sales tax. We abated zero of their sales tax. We abated zero of their gaming tax. We abated zero of their hotel motel, just a little bit of their property tax.
Which allows them to make those massive improvements. It's a beautiful property.
Right. In exchange, they invested $250 million into Bossier City. They are the second largest revenue as far as gaming tax is concerned. Margaritaville's still the big dog here in Northwest Louisiana. But they're close number two. They're generating a significant amount of sales tax and hotel tax revenue. They are in a property that was just dying away. The other one, Chasing Aces.
Okay, I didn't know they. Interesting. Huge development. Sitting on a landfill owned by Bossier City. So guess how much that land was given to us? That makes sense.
That land was generating $0 a year in property tax because it was owned by the city.
Right.
It was generating $0 a year in property tax. Now it is generating millions of dollars in sales tax. And for a very small, sometimes you have to sit back and think, well, does this make sense?
Right.
And people say, oh, well, you're favoriting big conglomerates. John Dudley, the CEO of Chasing Aces,
small business guy,
is from here. Yep. Like, he lives here. You know,
there's anybody, guy's got a heart of gold. I really like John. Matter of fact, he was one of our first podcast guests when Chasing Aces was just, you know, a figment of his imagination. And to see what he's done with the place from those really early conceptual ideas he had, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's something that we have, you know, I think the only thing similar is in New Orleans, right? The Top Golf in New Orleans. And I think we have something that's even more special than that franchise. So I had no idea that was one of the tax abatement deal. So if there's only two and one of them is a Bossier City Shreveport guy, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
There was another one, I can't remember their name, but they had an ITEP, in their Bossier City based business. They wanted to expand, add another 200 jobs, their local company over off Industrial. They wanted to expand, so they asked to reapply for their ITEP. Well, ITEPs are heavily regulated. You have to have X amount of jobs. You have to create X amount of revenue into the municipality. There's a whole governing board and so they applied to say, hey, we're interested in expanding. Can we get another ITEP? And so the thought process that Bossier City's just out here abating everybody, it's so not true. Like, yes, there are a few, and look, if you want to open up a business and you can generate the kind of jobs that the ITEP program is looking for, you can apply. Anybody can apply. It's not just for big businesses, for small businesses too.
Yeah, that is, I think it's almost an assumption now that if you want, to open a business in Bossier, you're going to get some big tax break, but really it's a pretty level playing field.
Very level.
I would think that if you want to open a business and you're looking in the area of Bossier's the place to be. We have a well-funded, fully staffed police department, highly rated fire department.
Yeah.
It's just safer, nicer. It's a great community. Like you said, you chose this place to start your family, to start your business. I did the same thing. It's just interesting that can be common knowledge, but also completely wrong.
Right.
So I find that to be funny. That was one of the questions that I was curious about is, moving on from the non-disclosure agreements, it kind of touches on a similar area, how businesses interact with the government, because I think some people assume that there's some kind of shady dealings going on whenever a business gets a tax break, when really my understanding is there is a quid pro quo. You're going to get this tax abatement for an amount of time, but you've got to bring in jobs or generate revenue somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a wash.
There's a local business owner that everybody knows by name in Bossier City who had an ITEP, and he failed to live up to his end of the deal. The city, the parish, the school board, we all voted and we removed his abatement. And he had to pay back his back taxes that were abated because he never lived up to his version or to his end of the deal. So, you can get an abatement, and if you don't live up to it, you've got to pay up. And so, what we certainly don't have a lot in Bossier City. And that's not to say that we won't entertain it if somebody asks, but if you ask, you better come to the table and say, with facts, that this is the jobs that I'm going to create. These are the sales tax that I'm going to put into your economy. And this is why I deserve to have it. And if you can do that, then we'll give you an opportunity.
That it brings up something that I promise I'll give you the opportunity to ask you questions that aren't as pointed. And I'm not trying to hit you with a lot of gotchas, but you talked about put up or pay up. And, just recently, within the past week, we've had this whole uproar about the pools.
Oh, goodness.
And there was, the mayor put out something. It even went back to the town hall that we had in South Bossier, where it was kind of put out like, hey, we're shutting down Mike Wood Memorial Park, the pool at Mike Woods. It's called Mike Woods Pool. The S is, a point of contention on the sign. But if you grew up in South Bossier, it's Mike Woods Pool.
Yeah.
So initially, the city said it's too expensive. We're shutting it down. And the social media uproar was huge. I haven't seen anything go as viral about this since term limits. This was a huge issue.
I agree.
And it was quick. It was like pouring gas on a fire. So walk me through what happened with the pools, because from my understanding, it was a done deal.
Yeah.
So explain the course correction, this 180. And I know you haven't voted on it yet. I think you vote on it tomorrow. And by the time I finish editing this video, it may be the day before. So it's going to take me a while to put all this video together. Walk me through what happened with the pools. How did we get to where we are?
Sure. So look, the last year, people think this was just like a spur of the moment decision. Last year, as we're going through budget season, Parks and Recs, we're talking to them about their budget, and they're like, hey, we think we might could save some money by cutting this pool out. Well, my natural reaction is, well, how are we going to cut a pool out? And so they give us the facts, and we're analyzing these facts, and we're like, well, it's kind of a no-brainer based on what we're looking at here, right? And so you're looking at it, and mayor says, look, I think this is the best decision, and so we go on with life, right? And this is a administrative decision. There's a lot that people think the council can do and the council can't do. And the mayor is the CEO of Bossier City. Like he runs Bossier City. There's just a few things he has to come and ask us for, and that's to expend money or sign contracts and things like that. And so this was an administrative decision. And, but to fully transparent based on the facts that I'm looking at, and I was like, fiscally, this makes the most sense. And so, that was made months ago, and we get thrown so much at us. And honestly, I'd forgotten about it until one day I'm scrolling through social media and I see this post in a South Bossier Facebook group of, hey, does anyone know anything about the pools closing? And so I jump in there again. We talked earlier about I'm quick, maybe I need to take a breather. Well, I'm just trying to sell the story, not sell it as make people be okay with it, but make them understand like there is a greater reason here. It's not just because we hate kids and don't want them to have fun in the summertime. These decisions have real financial consequences, whether good or bad, right? And so I was trying to explain our reasoning, and from my perspective, as an at-large council member and somebody who really studies the budget, I just saw the pool closing as an inevitable. We could keep it open for 2026, but we might close at 2027, or we might have to close in 20. It was an inevitable regardless, based on the facts as they were presented to me. And so we tried to go out and find comparable recreation activities. And a lot of people are questioning the splash pads. Oh, well, they can't afford the pool, but they can afford a splash pad. Well, the splash pad was going to be paid with a grant from the state. The pump track and the BMX track, that grants from the state. And we're still going to do those things. We're still pursuing them. Even though now, as you know, the pool is going to remain open. I assume, I don't think it's going to fail at the city council, but it does. We still have to have that. And so anyway, so you talk about this uproar. So we had the uproar and we come back to the table because that's what good people do. And good people say, hey, look, are we making the right decision? And as we're digging into it, the new CAO, because he wasn't around whenever this decision was made. So the new CAO is digging into it. And then, we realized that the assumptions that we made were on some informal data. And as we looked deeper into it, we felt like maybe there was a better way. Maybe we could do something because maybe we weren't as far off as we originally thought. And so the relationship with Rock Solid was then born. And so now you're going to have an outside entity. It's going to save the city tremendous amount of money, tremendous, because of the liability insurance, the staffing of the pool and all of that. So, and what people don't know or may not realize, I saw a lot of comments about this is where I learned to swim and, kids may drown if they don't have access to this. Did you know that Bossier City has not done swimming lessons since 2018?
No, I didn't.
So
I knew that when I was younger, that was where you got your swimming lessons, was at Mike Woods.
So since 2018, we haven't done swimming lessons because we haven't had certified lifeguards to teach swimming lessons. There are facts out there that we lied about the amount of lifeguards. No, we didn't lie about that. And I think that one of the lifeguards came on and said, look, I had 16 colleagues. These are high school kids. They're under 18, which means you have labor laws. When you're operating a pool, I think Mike Wood Pool used to operate for 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. When you're operating a pool that, 70 hours a week with high school kids and
rotation.
You got to have a rotation. They got to have days off. They can only work X amount of hours. And so you quickly realize that, man, 16 isn't enough. And so, the staffing challenge was real. That was a real challenge. Now, we felt like after we looked closer at the data, we felt like if we could make this partnership with Rock Solid work, that this would be a good way. We still have the grant funding. We can still go get a splash pad to put in for little younger kids. We can still do the BMX track. But we feel really good about this relationship. And the question of, well, why is it only 1 year? Well,
that was my next question is, is this a trial period to see if this works out?
Yeah, so I think it'd be unreasonable for us to sign a 10-year contract at X amount of dollars per year and it not work out.
Right.
So this is a trial to see how many people are actually going to come to the pool, because we're going to collect real data. Mm-hmm. The Rock Solid is going to be challenged with telling us how many people come every single day. Of those people, how many of them are field trips from daycares, and how many of them are under, are kids and adults. And we're going to try to get some actual data, because the data we have now is not great.
Yeah. We'll talk about having the world's best advertising prior to bringing your business to.
I think that pool is going to be,
gonna be busy.
I think this might be Rock Solid's best performing pool.
How, now I know Rock Solid through one of their administrators was heavily involved at Parkway. She taught and coached for years and years. But how did the city, because you kind of went from shutting the pool down. I know that was an administrative decision. It wasn't a council, I say, but I'm using you guys
sure
globally. How did you come to finding them and getting them on board so quickly? Because the outroar was pretty big, and it seemed like within 72 hours, there's a potential solution. So walk me through how that happened.
Man, look, I have to put all of that on the CAO. When council said, hey, look, we think that there's a better way, he jumped to action. Rock Solid manages all the Shreveport pools, all the SPAR pools. So they're a known entity when it comes to public swimming pools. And so it was just a quick phone call. They were happy to do it. They were excited about it. They knew the Mike Wood pool. They have been to the pool before. They knew what they were getting. And they said, look, this is what we can offer you. For the first time since 2018, Bossier City's going to have swim lessons this summer. We're going to have better hours for the people to have more access. They're going to have better concessions. It is going to be a better experience than what the city could have ever done.
I did read, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I read in the contract this morning when they posted the agenda that they're going to be like elderly water aerobics.
Yeah.
We've never offered that. I thought that was really good.
Never offered that.
So that's hopeful. If you can find a time where you can have dedicated time for swim lessons, dedicated time for senior adult water exercise or water aerobics, I'm really excited about that. I hope that the community realizes, it's like getting called off death row.
Yeah.
They got a last minute reprieve for this pool, and I hope it pays off for everybody. I hope it's a good partnership.
I am a firm believer that government does nothing well. We don't, right? But we can fix roads, we can mow grass, we can pick up trash, maybe not well, but we can do that. But what we don't do good is running swimming pools.
Right.
Like that is a job that's better for the private sector. And Bossier City has done an okay job, but not a great job in its past of these public-private partnerships.
Right.
And so expanding on that, letting the private industry come in and say, hey, look, we get it. You're cash strapped. You only make certain amount of dollars. You have to do a lot with that. With all of this about the pool prompted me to start educating people on Bossier City's budget. And what a lot of people didn't realize is that 63% of our general fund, which is our day-to-day operations, just goes to fund salaries and benefits for employees. Like we operate an entire city off 37% of our income. That's every road, that's the grass, that's the trash, that's everything, with 37% of our income, including a swimming pool. And so the private world is going to be able to come in and make this better. And you're seeing that a lot in Bossier City. Speaking of grass cutting, we privatized that with some of our big corridors, Arthur A.T. Parkway, Barksdale Boulevard, Innovation Drive. Like that is going to make the city look cleaner because they can do it better than we can.
Mm-hmm. I think this is kind of, we talked about this administration and this council term making a turning point. Mm-hmm. So the first 4 months was really reactive. You were reacting to the previous 4 years. You were reacting to the term limits saga, the parking lot saga. And it's almost like finally in May of 2026, you're pivoting to looking forward.
Mm-hmm.
So looking forward this year, what have we gotten? What have we accomplished that has been good? But what do we have to look forward to that maybe the general public isn't aware that you've been working on because
Sure.
we've been so focused on what's happened and being reactive?
Sure. So you nailed it, man. This first year of this new council has been figuring out where we're going to go. How do we do things differently than have been done in the past, right? The most dangerous words in the world, or it's the way it's always been done.
Right.
And so how do we maybe fix a few wrongs, but also reinvent and leave our legacy as a new council? And so, things like the boardwalk, I wish I can't go into a whole lot of detail, but what I can tell you is right after everybody was elected in March of last year, so almost a year to the day,
Mm-hmm.
I was going around, I was introducing these new council people to anybody and everybody they may work with. And one of the meetings we had was with the Greater Bossier Economic Development Foundation. And one of the big things that they said was, Boardwalk. We need something to happen with Boardwalk. And what people may not realize, Boardwalk, private entity, city doesn't own it.
Mm-hmm.
But what we do own is all the concrete inside of it.
Right.
Like we own the streets, we own the sidewalks, we own the $60 million parking garage and all the parking lots. Like that's all us. So while we don't own the boardwalk, we have a big financial interest in the success of the boardwalk.
Right.
Well, Brian Hammond's doing what Brian Hammond's does. We're sitting in this meeting. He's like, I'm going to call the owner of the boardwalk. And he does. Calls the owner of the boardwalk. We look him up on Google, calls the owner of the boardwalk. His secretary answers. And before you know it, we get a meeting set up with the second in command of Ruth Enterprises, the property manager of the boardwalk. And we're sitting in the Greater Bossier Economic Development Foundation conference room meeting with these guys. And we're like, hey, you've got to fix this because the city has a big investment in this property and we need it to be successful. Well, now fast forward, you have Pickler that's gone in. They weren't going in to the boardwalk this time last year. That was the dream that we sold them, right? To give the boardwalk ownership credit, like they took the criticism and they developed a plan and they have a rock solid plan. They have a restaurant that left that's coming back.
Wow.
They have resecured all their current tenants in new leases. They have done so much work and they are only getting started. And I feel confident that as I sit here today, when we come back 1 year from now, we're going to look back and you're going to be, man, Chris, you were right. Boardwalk's completely different. So you have that. The city council, you may remember, we passed an ordinance to do a marketing campaign. We talked a little bit about economic development a little while ago. Mm-hmm. Well, instead of us just going out and trying to bring people here, we want to be able to sell ourselves and people to just want to come here. Mm-hmm. Right. So like if you know nothing about Bossier City, nothing about Northwest Louisiana, but someone tells you you're a medium business owner and someone tells you that there's a little city in Northwest Louisiana with 68,000 people that's got great public safety, great schools. It's a great place to live. You ought to expand and open there. And you Google Bossier City, what's going to pop up? Some unfortunate news about crime in another city. Mm-hmm. Some dude who works for a radio station who loves to write negative articles about Bossier City and he doesn't even live here. Like, does that get you excited?
Right.
So we've done it the right way and it hasn't cost hardly anything. We just need to land one customer and it's well paid for itself. Mm-hmm. But so we've hired this marketing firm. They've come in, they've interviewed business owners, they've interviewed constituents, they've gotten a feel of where Bossier is, where it's going, what people want, what they don't want. They just finished some focus groups. We're going to actually be meeting with them later this week to go over the results of their focus groups. And we're getting ready to launch this marketing campaign to say Bossier City is open for business.
How long has that been in the works? Because I don't know that I've ever heard this. I try to keep up with everything. I vaguely remember maybe an ordinance How long has this been in the works?
It was one of the first resolutions we passed when we came in, and then we appropriated via ordinance some money closer to the end of 2025. But I mean, it was one of the first things that we did. And it's one of those things like it's coming to fruition. Government works slow, right? And so anyways, that's coming. We have this big UDC rewrite and comprehensive master plan,
which has been a topic of a lot of conversation lately.
It has. And so why is it important? Our UDC is outdated. The UDC is the rules in which we live by.
Right. And UDC stands for?
Unified Development Code.
Gotcha.
And so if you want to open up a business, you have to come in and the MPC is going to give you a checklist and say, okay, if you're going to build your business or you're going to open at this vacant building, this is what you need to do. And some of it's outdated. Some of it's dumb. Like the amount of trees you have to plant or...
So our current, it's funny you say that. Our current UDC is responsible for the number of trees in the parking lot at the Walmart on Barksdale.
Correct.
Okay. Because that layout, no one in South Bossier likes that layout. And one thing I've said is this is 100% not Walmart doing this because they hate having drivers in the parking lot. This is a development requirement that had a certain amount of green space per parking spot.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
Probably from 20 years ago.
Well, and then something else I don't like. Look at the Walmart on Airline Drive, that massive parking lot that they have that's never full. But because of their square footage of their store, the UDC says you have to have X amount of parking spots. Well, now we're slowly becoming a city full of concrete, and we're losing our character. We're losing the beautifulness of nature. Like we're losing all of that because of an outdated UDC. And so that is, the UDC is not currently business friendly. It's not developer friendly. And so it needs a rewrite. And rewriting it is only going to spur new development and new growth. But then you get into the comprehensive master plan. Comprehensive master plan is your roadmap of where you're going. Now, I'm not a master plan guy. I'm not a demographer. Not an engineer. I don't study traffic, but this is just my simple mind thinking, right? So you have Bossier City. It can't go anywhere to the west. There's a river.
Yep.
Can't go anywhere to the east. There's a military installation. Yep. And the town of Halton that is creeping up because they're growing. We can't go anywhere much north. Like we end at Wemple Road, we can maybe get to Kingston. But once you get past Kingston, now you're in Benton. So we have a little bit of room that we can grow. So if Bossier City is going to grow, where are we going to go? It's a vast amount of land south of Bossier City down Highway 71. Like you have to think, like we coin where we're sitting currently, SOBO, South Bossier. Could there be a reality where Bossier City starts to grow south, or we're really considered more central Bossier? South Bossier is way down there, you know? Who knows? But if I have no idea what the master plan is going to tell us. But if I was a betting man, I would bet it would tell us, hey, this is where you have room to grow. Now, I'm not advocating for the city to annex and to aggressively push. I think it needs to be controlled growth, because what you'll see in a lot of municipalities is they grow too fast. And then when they grow too fast, then the population decline happens, and then they have hundreds of miles of sidewalk and streets and underground infrastructure that they can't maintain.
Shreveport has a huge land area, and the services on the edges of that suffer.
Did you know
Southwest and South Shreveport?
Do you know by landmass, Shreveport is bigger than the city of Atlanta?
I did. Yeah, Shreveport is much larger than most people realize.
And not even close to its population, not even close to like a tenth of its population. And so you don't want to expand so much to where you put yourself in jeopardy financially. But this master plan, it's going to tell us, hey, this is where your traffic pattern's probably going to go. This is where your schools need to go. And it's how you plan for the future. And for South Bossier, well, that means a growing economy down here, because this is where when I was a kid growing up, I had a friend that I went to church with that lived in Green Acres Place. It was a brand new subdivision at the time. And I remember when my mom would drive me to Green Acres Place, that was a long way. You know, you were driving down Airline and it was nothing but cornfields and you're like, where are we going and when are we going to get there? Well, now Green Acres Place is right in the middle of town. Like it is. And, you know, and so like North Bossier for the last 20 years has really developed. And I hear a lot of people from South Bossier say, we feel like we're getting left behind. Well, now North Bossier's developed so much that they have nowhere else to go.
And that's one thing that has been one of my personal criticisms on our current and the current development plan, master plan, from 20 years ago, because it never resolved any of the issues in South Bossier. I remember as a kid going to high school and passing JP Sports Bar, Peter's Grocery, and all of these businesses that were vacant and boarded up 20 plus years ago. And today I'm driving my kid to school and the same businesses are there boarded up. And maybe I have a different opinion than some of my counterparts, but I think we need a massive overhaul. Yeah. Because like I shared with some of my colleagues recently at one of the various meetings that I go to for political things, but, you know, no one wants to go outside of the casinos and maybe a concert. There's not a lot of vacationing happening here. Right. And I look at the places that my family goes on vacation, hot springs or going to Florida. Take away the beach, take away the mountains. What makes those places interesting to visit? And I think part of that is you can stay at a hotel or stay at an Airbnb and be within walking distance of shops that aren't chain shops, you know, antique stores and things like that. And we don't have a place for those businesses right now. And we don't have the code to allow those businesses. Now, are you going to have an Airbnb in every neighborhood? No. But is there a place for it? I think in any thriving city, the answer is yes. Think about the places where you go on vacation. And that's one of my reasons why I've been a big fan of updating that. Our current UDC code does not allow for food trucks. Yet everybody's always asking me, we need to do more and we need to allow food. You know, the city of Bossier just kind of turns a blind eye to food trucks. Right. And that's not a good way. You shouldn't be just turning a blind eye because there should be rules in place. You shouldn't just say, all right, well, we're going to let you operate, but it's kind of illegal, so we're just not going to enforce. That's not how growing cities function. And, you know, a friend of mine, we joke a lot with each other, and he says, well, Bossier City has become the land of strip centers and stucco. But he's not wrong. Like that is what our UDC, that is what our master plan called for 20 years ago, because that's where they thought the world was going, was strip centers and stucco facade, you know. And so as we've evolved, our plan hasn't evolved with it. And so it's super important that if we want to see Bossier City reach its potential, that we start this process. And so I've been very passionate about it. It's going to be I told my colleagues this. I said, I don't think y'all realize this today, but this is the most consequential vote of our term. Like, this is the biggest thing we're going to vote on. And I truly believe that because we're setting the new vision for Bossier. Gone is the vision from 20 years ago. Gone is the vision from that mayor, from that council of 20 years ago. It's a new mayor. It's a new council. It's our vision. And it's what are we going to make Bossier City like? I think you couldn't. I really appreciate that. And, you know, looking back 26 years ago, I think, at that time, they had a completely different vision. They thought this was going to be a hockey town. You know, they built a massive arena, whether it's a great idea or a terrible idea. Yeah. You know, they built it specifically for a hockey team that evaporated in just a few years after it was built. Yeah. You know, the expansion happened, I think, a lot more north than they thought. There was going to be a lot of development in South Bossier. That didn't pan out. So it's time, I think, to deviate from a plan that maybe not intentionally, but it failed.
Right.
It wasn't anybody's fault. That didn't pan out. And I think it's a pivotal time to course correct.
It is.
And, no offense. You said earlier, government doesn't do anything right.
Right.
So you go and get experts.
Right.
And I think that is probably the best thing that the city could do, and say, hey, we're not going to make up the master plan. As talented as your crew is and your colleagues are, we're going to go to experts, and we're going to try out different experts. We're going to find a group that we think can help us shape the future.
Yeah.
So I've supported it. I've supported it publicly. I've supported it privately. I think the new UDC and the master plan is something we've desperately needed. We needed it 10 years ago.
It's big. And look, and then you sit here and you talk about like this term, and we've mentioned a few people, but like just the team that we have right now. Like, I mean, let's think about it. You have Brian Hammond's District 1. He is kind of like always has his finger on the pulse of the community. Like nobody really knows what the community's thinking more like Brian Hammond's. Like he reacts
kind of how, if I was on the council, I feel like I'd be mad about that.
Yeah, he's kind of.
I'd ask some questions.
People like to coin him as the bull in the china closet, and that's 100% accurate. But like his finger, like he knows what the people want. You have Miss Ross. Oh my goodness, I love Miss Ross. She's like my grandma, right? Like I just love her, and she is so kind. But she's very intuitive. She asks you questions sometimes that when you feel like you know the answer, then she pushes you a little bit and says, but why do you think this is the right way? And she always has a great perspective. Cliff in District 3, he's like our de facto spiritual leader, man. He is such a great human being. And I really do feel like having him on the council and just having somebody who's always praying over us and always hoping for the best, I have great respect for him. So he's 3. Who's next? Joel, District 4. I'm running through the map in my head. Dude, Joel's super savvy. He knows how to politic. He knows how to, but man, he's brilliant. Very analytical. CPA background, insurance agent. Don't compare him to anybody else with that same background, but he's great with numbers. And so, I mean, he's always there to answer your phone call. Like if there's anybody on the council that if I needed to call him to help me in a pinch, like Joel's one of those guys, right? Vince is in District 5. Like, dude, Vince is a great dude. Like, he's quirky. He's Vince Maggio, right? But he's kind of like your old Bossier. Like he has that perspective of how old Bossier thinks. And, Bossier's kind of on this cusp of old and new. Like we're really wanting to get into that new, and we're almost there.
That's fair. That's a fair assessment. I mean, he gets a lot of negative press in South Bossier in general because of he kind of flip-flop on term limits. And, but he does represent probably a group that wasn't pro term limits from the get-go. So that's kind of, he does represent that district pretty well.
And he represents a large group of the electorate here in Bossier City that is old Bossier. Like we can't forget about old Bossier. And so then you have Creighton, my colleague at large, and my goodness, that's my dude, man. I love Creighton Cochran. He's passionate about his community, and he makes us get more passionate. Like I'm passionate about Bossier City. That dude is really passionate about Bossier City. And so he's always pushing us to make Bossier City, as the best it can be. And then when you look at, so that's our council, but then you look at the administration, Shane Cheatham, dude. Like the reason I'm sitting here today, like that text that we talked about earlier, we got to get you on the ballot. And he did. And we ran into 3 amigos. He's one of my best friends in the entire world. He's a workhorse. That dude, nobody's going to work harder than Shane Cheatham. Nobody is going to put in more hours than Shane Cheatham. Nobody's going to take a subject and learn it and know it like the back of his hand. Like Shane, he loves Bossier City, and he's somebody people just trust. Like people are drawn to him. He has the personality where you like the guy.
It's getting pretty late now. He may still be at work.
He may be.
I mean, it's funny you say that he's a workhorse, because that was the first thing that came to mind. He wasn't even on the clock yet. I don't think he had maybe completed his term at the governor's office, and he was pulling 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock.
Yeah, snowstorm just threw it out there.
Getting into everything. And I was really impressed. I didn't expect anything different.
Yeah.
But, this was a friend that I used to call and talk to once a week, and call him in the evening, and he's still at work. I'm like, man, it's 8 o'clock in the evening. He's like, well, I got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And having his perspective, somebody that I don't need to pick his brain, because I already kind of know that if it's best for Bossier, that's probably the direction he's working towards.
Yeah.
So I trust him probably like you do, implicitly. He's got my stamp of approval, because I know his heart, and I also know his background, his intelligence. Like, he's got the perfect gig for him.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Well, and then, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about our fearless leader, the CEO, the mayor of Bossier, Tommy Chandler. Tommy has, this second term really kind of rebuilt his inner circle. And, look, there's no hiding it. Everybody knows, we didn't always see eye to eye. We were the three amigos. And then we had to make decisions in that first term, basically in survival mode. And I went one direction, he went another direction. Term 2 came in, and we now have a more unified front. And so he's really rebuilt his team. He's surrounding himself with people like Shane, who know what they're doing. And we need that. We need the head of the city to be strong, to be a strong mayor, because at the end of the day, when these big companies are coming in, they're not coming to talk to City Councilman Chris Smith. They're not coming to talk to Wes Marriott. They're not coming even to talk to CAO Shane Cheatham. They want to talk to the mayor.
Right.
They want to talk to the mayor of Bossier. And so it's important that Tommy Chandler be strong and have experts around him and look good and have a council. And, it's very, it's easy to take shots at people. But what we need to do is realize that we're all in this for one reason: to make Bossier City the best it can be. And if Tommy Chandler is successful, if Shane is successful, if all 7 council members are successful, you know what that means? Bossier City is successful.
And that's why I don't, there's been a little bit of focus on some of the debate. Because y'all have had some spirited debates in the last several weeks on various topics. And it's very different from the spirited debates of the last term. Because previously, with the Montgomery Free Darby majority that they had, when there was a spirited debate, it was almost like, and this is taking it to the extreme, it was like good versus evil. There was a topic, and this side was for tyranny, and this side was for freedom.
Yeah.
It's hard for the public to draw a distinction now with some of the spirited debate now, because I got a phone call a couple weeks ago, hey, what's up with the council? Do they hate each other? And I'm like, no. They agree on 99% of everything, which they're not all the same political party.
Right.
So I think that's, one, impressive itself. But 2, this is how a republic works. You have a debate in public where everyone can see that maybe Chris and Creighton don't agree on this issue. But as soon as they walk out the door, they do agree that they love Bossier City. They believe in conservative politics. And it's just one little thing that how do you skin this cat today? And I try to tell people, there's a huge difference between the debate now and the debate 4 years ago. Would you agree that's an accurate assessment? Yeah,
for sure. So, look, for good example is, last week me and Creighton had a disagreement. We disagreed. We were on opposite sides of a debate. But dude, his wife and my wife, they're close friends. My daughter loves his daughter. Our families go eat out dinner together. We walked out of that council meeting and I hugged that dude's neck right there and said, dude, I love you. Like we have a philosophy that we're going to go into every council meeting. We're not going to just tiptoe around. We're going to go through the legislative process. And, there's the old saying that the legislative process is like making sausage. It's messy. It's dirty. If you saw it, you probably wouldn't eat the sausage again. That's how government sometimes operates. Like it's not clean. Like you have people with different ideals. And that's what makes this country so great is that the form of government that we have is made up to so much to where you can debate. And then at the end of the debate, a vote happens and the majority wins, right? And so we have a philosophy that we can go out onto the dais and we can have our debates. We can push what we think is right for the city of Bossier. But when we walk out, we're still friends. We still respect each other. You never say something in a debate that is personal. You never say anything in a debate that is going to intentionally hurt somebody. You just express your viewpoint, and when you walk out of it, you're still friends. And
that's the essence of debate. You produce your viewpoint.
Yeah.
You provide evidence to support your viewpoint. If there's an opposing viewpoint, you could provide evidence that attacks the foundation of their argument. You're not attacking them.
Right.
You're attacking their viewpoint, or maybe providing alternative perspective.
And what's wild is, so over the last year, so my first 4 years pretty much knew where every vote was going to go, right?
And that's the other side too, is because you're now debating in public because it wasn't decided beforehand. Here's the plan. Because there was very little debate besides that, tyranny versus freedom debate. But on routine things, it's, yep. And I just could only imagine that they probably, the proverbial got their marching orders and here's what we're going to do. This is the plan. Vote here.
Yeah. So like the first 4 years, I pretty much knew where every vote was going to be. And it's probably going to be 5-2, right? Mm-hmm. So like we knew that. There were a couple of times, maybe once or twice out of hundreds of votes, where I was kind of shocked that a vote went a certain way. And this first year of this second term, there's been many votes that I was certain was going to go one way and it went the complete opposite. I mean, just last week, there was a vote that I was for sure did not think was going to go the way it ended up going, and it did. And I think minds may have gotten changed during debate. I think that it's how the government operates or should operate. And what you're seeing is you're seeing rookie, I don't like to call them rookies, but newer council members who are learning how Bossier City's government operates. You're seeing them really now they've gotten their feet wet. So now they know how the process works. And so they're kind of trying to push things, their ideals and what they feel is best. And so, if we all agreed, I think that'd be bad for Bossier. I think it's great that we have some disagreements, and ultimately, we have an opportunity to figure out what's going to be the best course of action for Bossier.
I agree, and I'm really encouraged by the debate.
Yeah.
One, it tells me Chris Smith isn't calling everybody and saying, "Here's your marching orders. We're voting on this." But two, it says to me that as a first-term counselor, that opposing and dissenting viewpoints are not only allowed, they're encouraged.
Yeah.
I was really proud of Miss Ross and the stance that she took on the Bossier Arts Council, not because I agreed with her, but she felt comfortable enough in the maturity of that body to provide her opinion, to dissent respectfully. And, that's not something that's easy. It's not easy to disagree with your peers on something that's as contentious and as emotional as that debate was. I was really encouraged by that. And I just like you, I have a lot of respect for Miss Ross. And
she's the best.
Representing that district, of course, wasn't a big fan of the previous counselor, but I think she does a really wonderful job for her district. And like you said, very passionate. It's clear that she cares. And that was really encouraging to see that.
And this has been very long format interview, longer than I think either one of us expected it to go. But we've hit on a lot of topics. We've hit on a lot of the past, a lot of the present, a lot of the future, and a lot of what we're talking about is Bossier being right there on the cusp, right? Mm-hmm. And we've mentioned that a couple of times. Like Bossier City we're on our way up. Not to say that we're down now, but we are destined for greatness, and we're moving forward. To hit a few last minute things, this council has said that we're going to take public safety seriously. If you look at us by the numbers, our biggest investment every single year is public safety, and we upped the ante this year by another $1 million, the largest single year investment in public safety in Bossier City's history, because we want Bossier to stay safe. We want to get back to that reputation that when you're in Bossier City, you're going to obey the law, and our citizens are going to be safe. We're in constant competition with other municipalities. Right down I-20 for 45 minutes, there's a little town called Ruston. And Ruston is doing everything they can to beat Bossier City. And Bossier City has got to start fighting back. We cannot rest on our laurels. Like, there's other growing municipalities. What is going on in Richland Parish, Delhi, Louisiana, is going to be the next up and coming, because they are getting just flooded with income. So we have all this constant competition. Bossier Parish has been one of the fastest growing parishes in Louisiana, the fastest north of I-10. Mm-hmm. But with all of this major investment happening north of I-10, mind you, like, we risk losing that designation. So we've got to remember we're in constant competition with all of these other municipalities, and we want to win because we love Bossier City, and we want Bossier City to be successful. We want Bossier City to win. We want people to feel safe. We want people to come here, want to vacation here. So we have a plan, and it's all kind of starting to come to fruition. And so all I want to say to the people that are sticking through and listening to this is your elected officials, we truly have your best interests at heart. We're not perfect people. We make mistakes. Like the pool situation, it was a mistake, but we can course correct. We can do it respectfully. Like, not everybody is out here lining our pockets. Not everybody, but we're human beings, and this is the biggest full-time, part-time job I've ever had. This is the hardest $10,800 a year that I'll ever earn. But I do it because I love Bossier City. And I've got that 5-year-old and 3-year-old that are sitting at home right now, probably in bed. And I want them to stay here when they grow up. I want to have grandkids. But I understand that as Bossier is today, it doesn't give them everything that I want for them as a father. And that is the goal. That is what we're fighting for every single day. And I have a finite amount of time. I'm almost done. Almost done with my time on the city council. And, we've got to keep plugging away. We've got to keep our head down and press forward, because the work never stops. When we're sleeping, there's another person that's wide awake figuring out how they can win, and I want to beat them. That's really an interesting outlook, and you're right. If you're not striving, someone else is. And we have been talking for hours now, and I couldn't wrap it up any better than that. It did take 3 years of me pestering you for an interview. So I hope that we can have this conversation again, but maybe not wait 3 years. Does that sound fair? Sounds fair.
All right, well, let's wrap this up. Thank you again. I really appreciate your time and going into not just the fun part of it, but answering some of the questions that I know people want to know about. So thank you again, Chris
Absolutely.
Smith.
Thank you.